Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? Oops, I touched the wrong button. Okay, here we go. Hey, my game screen is set up. Finally. Oh, wait. Right. Ads are in progress. I'll be right back. Okay, now we're actually starting. Ignore that original. Hello, if you managed to see it. But hello. Welcome back, everyone, to another Monday night reading. Scare. I am Scare, and we are presently reading The Woman Who Rides Like a Man by Tamora Pierce. Oh my gosh, I pronounced it right correctly. For the first time ever. How is everyone doing today? I know I've been a bit lax lately, and I am still working on it. Good news is that Poppin is gonna help me stream more by playing Baldur's Gate 3 with me, starting tomorrow evening around, I think it was 9 p.m. CST? Or is it CST or EST? 9 p.m. EST. Yes. Okay. I'm like, wait. That's putting it to 10 o'clock for FOP, and like, that's a bit late. About now time. Yeah. 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 We're gonna do with that with FOP and tomorrow on Tuesday evenings, and maybe a bit of something. And so help me if you get sick tomorrow. I'm gonna chase you down. Yeah, because we were supposed to start this last week, and I ended up being sick. Instead, I was sick today, so for most of the morning. You saw a video of Spore Druids dance? Huh? Noise. I have been playing some of Baldur's Gate's my own run of Baldur's Gate. I might end up just streaming it as is without starting it over because we'll be seeing some of the starts with Poppin when we do our playthrough, so I don't see a need to do a full start over for a single player match. And then that'll be just kind of, I'm doing it on my own as well as maybe a bit on stream as well. Also playthroughs make sense though too. Yeah, I mean like there's there's something like there's an insane amount of editing at different sorts of endings, so because it's D&D and this has any number of endings. Apparently there's so many potential cutscenes. Yeah. So we'll see different bits since 71 variants for ending. I heard it was more than that, but I also haven't been looking too much into things. 17,000 ending variations. So there's any number of ways that will basically it's a game you can play again and again and again and never see the same ending. Right numbers, wrong order, and no zeros. Maybe we should play as the companions together. Yeah, we can, because that's like when you, character creation is basically you could choose as one of the companions or etc. Now, not saying that we would do this, but it has me wondering, like you could romance your companions. Like, can you romance the friends you're playing with? Not to say that we would necessarily do so, but at least not on stream purposely, but it was made by Divinity, so true. Yeah. Updates. I now own a snake, and a pet cam on snake could be interesting. It would only be interesting if the snake actually moved out of its hiding spot, which it hasn't all day, so. But she hasn't all day, and I know it is a she because she was sexed from the seller breeder. Oops. Up. Wobbling. Monitors. Okay. So. Where were we? Alright. Alana took on apprentices. She had killed the previous shaman in self-defense. She and one of her apprentices, the male of the apprentices, Ishak, is a bit impatient with her slow teachings, which is in part and the girls, for the girls, because they hadn't had any training whatsoever, well, where he has had some training, but also just because he needs to learn control, and he doesn't want to learn control because he's a guy. He's like, I could do anything until something goes wrong. That's basically what's happened all of the last 2 chapters-ish. But yeah, I'm back to work, so definitely no streams during the day. Unless I decide to do just chatting streams. But we'll see how it goes. Work has been interesting to return to, as remembering how to do things and then just be like, I don't want to do it anymore. But yeah. Anyways, we're starting up with chapter 5. Apprentices. Every night, Kurem took time to work on her loom. Even Alana, who knew nothing of weaving, could see that she spent as much time unraveling mistakes as she did weaving. I just don't know enough, she told Alana one night as Kara and Ishak argued nearby over the use of a scroll of spells. Well, we know how this night's gonna turn out when I'm interposing words already. I was little when I was taught, and I haven't practiced for a long time, she sighed, looking discouraged. You remember Hakim Farar, the man you fought? Alana nodded. His mother is the best weaver in the tribe. I'd ask her to teach me, but... She made a face. The women think Kara and I have forgotten our place because we sit with the men. And it doesn't help that I wounded Mrs. Farrar's son, Alana said shrewdly. Kurem nodded. Alana tousled the girl's hair. I'd give anything to help you, but I don't know how to weave. All 3 apprentices, even Ishak, stared at her. Finally, Kara whispered, You don't know how to weave? Warriors don't learn such things, Ishak told the girl scornfully. Kurem stood abruptly. I'll be right back. She hurried from the tent. I just thought all the girls are taught when we were very young, Kara explained. You don't know how to card wool or spin thread, or... She stopped, baffled. I don't know how to bake either, Alana confided. The only cooking I know is the kind soldiers do on the march. Kara shook her head. In many ways, she was a very proper Bazir maiden. Alana often puzzled her. She was trying to explain the process of weaving when Kurem returned, bearing a lap-sized model of her big loom. The girl knelt beside Alana. I can teach you the simplest kind of weaving, if you want to learn, she offered. You couldn't do anything like stripes, but it would be a start. I'd love to learn, Alana admitted. It looks like fun. Kurem grinned. It is fun, when it goes right, she said. I really shouldn't start you weaving right away. We always had to learn to card wool. You know, comb out all the dirt and tangles and spin a good thread before we were let near a loom. Alana laughed. It's just like every fighting art I studied, she explained to her surprised audience. We had to learn how to make our weapons before we got to use them. You have to understand how a thing is made before you master it, Kara said wisely. Suddenly her face brightened. That's what you've been teaching us about magic. So if you know how the crystal sword is made, you can command it, Ishak added. Alana fought down a trace of alarm. That's not all of it, Ishak. She fixed his eyes with her own grim ones. To command things of nature, you need to understand how they are made, and you must want to command them. With things of magic, you develop your will until you are stronger than your gift. Otherwise, the power will turn on you. Do you understand me? She demanded. Ishak met her eyes defiantly, then looked away. Of course I understand. Alana frowned, worried for him. But there was no sense in pursuing the matter now. She examined the loom she held. What do I do with this thing? Hiram explained the device, naming the different parts, describing what they did. When she finished, she worked the shuttle until a row had gone on the threaded loom. Then she handed it back to Alana. Your turn. The loom was clumsy and awkward feeling to the knight, who was far more used to weapons. At last, she drew a breath and started the shuttle. The moment the thing began to move, she realized she didn't understand what was supposed to be happening. Within seconds, the threads were impossibly snarled. Kara choked back laughter. Even Karim had to smile. Ishak looked bored. Alana put the loom down, feeling younger and more ignorant than she had in years. Perhaps I need to learn the other things first. My teachers were right. For real skills, there aren't any shortcuts. I'll teach you, Karim offered, if you still want to learn. I thought that though it seems silly for you to go to such trouble when things you do are more important. What's more important than the clothes I wear? Alana wanted to know. Karim's right, Ishak remarked scornfully. Why should you fool with looms and women's things when you can fight and do magic? Alana didn't miss the scorn in Ishak's voice, or that the girls had flushed with embarrassment and begun to finger their veils. He needs a lesson, she thought, picking up a thread. This time, I'm going to give him one. So, you think weaving is stupid? Woman's work, Ishak yawned. Very much a Bazir male. It's alright if you have nothing better to do. Ishak swiftly tied a knot in the thread. Ishak fell as the carpet he stood on yanked itself out from under his feet, dumping the young man on the ground. The carpet then sailed around the tent frantically. Did I understand you correctly? She asked as the girls ducked and Faithful hissed and spit. Is working with thread less important than talking to demons and seeing the future? When Ishak opened his mouth to reply, Alana swiftly tied a second knot. The carpet stopped its mad journey, coming to a halt directly over Ishak's head. While I have your attention, Alana went on, I'd like to say a few things about thread magic. I've never used it. I learned what I know from our village healing woman when I was young, and from the palace healers. I do not know that a woman with a bit of string in her hands can bring down a troop of armed knights. If her will is strong enough, men, healers mostly, use thread magic too, but women acquire it more easily. I guess that's because most women know how to weave and spin and sew. You owe your fellow apprentices an apology, Ishak. She loosened the second knot, and the carpet began to lower itself onto Ishak's head. You can't treat Kara and Karim as the men of the tribe treat the women. These women are your equals. What they do, what they learn, is just as important as what you do and learn. Frankly, in some areas, they're better at it than you are. She untied the first knot, and the carpet whisked itself around the tent, stopping in front of Ishak this time. Alana undid what remained of the second knot. The carpet trembled. You're in the way, she told the young man. Startled, he moved aside, and the carpet settled gently into its former spot. I hope I've made myself clear. Ishak gasped, his eyes alight with discovery. Will you teach me how to do that? He demanded. I want to learn. Women's magic or not. Hand painfully squeezed Alana's heart. For a moment, he sounded exactly like her willful brother. I believe I mentioned an apology. I'm sorry, Ishak told the two girls. I keep forgetting. Kara was looking at the thread in Alana's hands with awe. You mean Karam and I could do magic while we were weaving and sewing? Just by making knots? Alana sighed, suddenly feeling tired and old. I'll teach all of you in the morning, she promised. For now, let's turn in. Obedient as always, they left, chattering eagerly. Once they were gone, Faithful jumped onto Alana's left shoulder, his favorite perching spot. That was an interesting display of temper, he commented. Why don't you pick on someone who can fight back? He's got to learn, Alana replied, dousing the lamps. Otherwise, he's going to insult some little old wrinkly lady shaman who will tie him in knots. Perhaps, the cat replied. Not just perhaps, Alana demurred. You know as well as I do that there are traps for sorcerers in the strangest places. At least I know I mean no harm. Someone else might not be so kind. You won't always be able to stand between another person and his fate, Faithful warned. You mustn't think you can look after the world. Lana chuckled and tugged her pet's long black tail. Who will look after it if I don't? Faithful gave a disgusted mutter and stuck his cold nose in her ear, surprising a laugh from her. To the new lessons in not magic, Alana added the names and powers of herbs, stones, and metals. Ishak and Kara complained about the added memorization, but they studied hard. Ishak now kept Alana up at night. He was quicker than the other two, and he had a feel for the gift, but his eagerness to learn dangerous things frightened her. He did not have the self-discipline of the girls. Was it because he had been more accepted by the tribe? Often Alana caught him staring at her crystal sword. She feared one day he would ignore her command and try to wield it. As an apprentice weaver, Alana was all thumbs. The girls were baffled. She reminded herself that she had not been even a passable swordsman when she first began to train. But such thoughts didn't soothe her hurt pride. Making things worse was the fact that there was no way she could teach Karam the advanced skills the girl lacked. I can't do it, Karam cried while working one night. A mass of knotted threads like a giant spider sat on her loom. I'm stupid and ignorant. You lost track of the pattern, a dry voice said from the opening that led to the temple part of the tent. Alana and her apprentices turned to stare at the tiny old woman who stood there. Alana recognized her. Caliph Sif had pointed Hakim's mother out to her before. The woman Karim said was the tribe's finest weaver. The old ladies lifted an unlit stick of incense. I was about to pay my respects to the mother when I overheard, she explained. Walking forward, she thrust the incense at Alana. Hold this. She joined Karim at the big loom. See? Here. And here. You broke the pattern. And here. She inspected the remainder of Karim's work as the girl clutched Kara's arm. Not bad for someone without much formal teaching. A tight, even weave. Karam beamed at the praise. Perhaps the first she's had from a woman of the tribe in years, Alana thought. Mr. Sfar walked over and picked up the cards, scrutinizing Alana's work. Be more patient, she said, her gray-brown eyes amused. You're missing little bits of dirt. She thrust the pieces of wool back at Alana. Start over and take your time. It'll be faster as you get accustomed to it. She drew a breath, looking around her. You're a promising weaver, young Karam. But you should be learning your own craft, not teaching it. I am sure your weaving could become better, Kara. The tall girl blushed and looked at her feet. And you should have a teacher who is accustomed to teaching, shaman, she told Alana firmly. You will learn from me, with Karem's permission, and I will show these two young women what more they can study. Doubtless, this young man can find something to occupy him, while we women work, she added dryly. For the grateful tears at the relief in the girls' faces, Alana could have kissed the formidable lady. Instead, she nodded, her face properly grave. I accept your kind offer, Mistress Farrar, for my apprentices and myself. At last, she exulted inwardly. One woman in the tribe has acknowledged that we exist, and I didn't have to ask Halosif or Ali Miktab to intervene. I am called Mari, the mother of Hakim replied. Now, come you girls. Show me what else you can do. When Karam returned a week later, he found things very different. He had much to say about the changes among the Bloody Hawk. Fortunately, he said all of it in private to Alana and Faithful. I think I'm leaving you in a fairly quiet place, he began as he unpacked his tent. Alana was watching as she scratched Faithful's ears. You weren't well enough known here that you could get into any trouble, and I thought they'd stay away from you. I come back, and you're the mother blessed shaman of the tribe. You've adopted 3 young ones, and you're forcing the woman to accept 2 of their own, sitting with men. You're turning purple, Alana commented when he stopped for breath. Can't you stay out of trouble for a few short weeks? He bellowed. I didn't ask for Ahnan ibn Nazir to attack me, she pointed out, but he did, and I killed him. I can't leave the tribe without a shaman, can I? Since I have no intention of being killed by the first rival who comes along, or of staying here forever, I picked 3 apprentices. It's not my fault that 2 of them are girls, but they are. The tribe has to treat them with respect if they're ever to be good shamans. And no, I couldn't have chosen just Ishak. But if something happens to him, all 3 have to be trained anyway. And Bazir custom, it's easier to break the king's law back home than it is to flout Bazir custom. Haven't you noticed? Bazir custom says I have to train them. Besides, having only 1 shaman when you can have 3 is silly. Ram sat heavily and accepted the brandy she poured for him. His broad, tanned face was wrinkled with concern. Lass, you're setting these poor folk on their ears, he said wearily. They haven't changed in centuries, and you're forcing them to accept things your own people can't accept. Not easily. But don't you see? To the Bazir, I'm a legend. They take things from me they wouldn't take from anyone else. I don't ask them to change for stupid reasons. They know having 3 shamans might make the difference to their survival. Even the women are beginning to accept the girls. At least Marie Farrar is. Karam drained his cup and shook his head when she offered a refill. I'm worried for you, he confessed. I hate seeing you, a stranger, always. You're an odd lass, but you're like my own kin. I want you to be happy. Alana put Faithful down and hugged her friend. I don't feel like a stranger here, she confessed as she wiped her eyes. It seems to me that I've known these people for a long time. All my life, perhaps. I don't always agree with them, but they make sense to me. Roughly touched by her affection, he asked, Do you commune with the voice of the tribes at sunset, then? All the way to the city, Hakim made a stop every night while he stared into the fire. He shuddered as he finished unpacking his saddlebags. It was spooky. Alana lifted Faithful up again, putting him on her shoulder. That's one thing I don't do, she said ruefully. It's too much like letting Ali McTab have a part of me. I don't want anyone to have a part of me. Not yet, anyway. Not even Prince Jonathan? Karam asked shrewdly. Alana blushed a deep red, and he chuckled. He said to tell ye, he'd be seeing you soon. Something about receiving instruction from Ali McTab? Oh, I've letters for you. From Lord Tom and Sir Miles. For a moment, the burly man struggled with himself. Then he gave in. There's another letter for you as well. He drew it from beneath his jerkin, handing it to her reluctantly. I should have burned it when he handed it to me. I'd hoped he knew better than to still be consorting with the likes of him. George, Alana said gleefully. Is he alright? Has he been, well, safe? He's flourishing, that one. Karam snapped. And what are ye doing going to give over befriending a rogue like him? Alana laughed impishly. When you stopped drinking. She laughed as he swore and returned to read her letters. George's missive was short, but its contents made her blush. She knew her old friend loved her, and she loved him in more than a friendly way. But Jonathan had always been first. George knew it and understood, but his words told her that he continued to hope. Miles' letter was long and chatty, giving her the news of everyone at court, nobles and servants. More than any other highborn person Alana knew, Miles made friends with everyone, not just his social equals. He was able to tell her about Cook and Stefan, the hostler, with as much detail as he gave the king and Jonathan. Only when she reread his letter did she notice that he said nothing about Tom. Tom's own letter more than made up for Miles' omission. Dear Alana, Karam tells me you've been adopted by a bunch of uncivilized desert men. How odd of you. He tells me now you're a man of the tribe, which is what you've always wanted, I suppose. No, don't scowl at me. Alana was scowling. I am enjoying myself here. Everyone is polite. Very polite. And the library has some classics of sorcery even my masters didn't possess. My education grows by leaps and bounds. I have attached some of the late Duke Roger's followers, including the lovely Delia of Eldorn. I have no interest in the lady as such, but I believe she may know where some of Roger's most secret manuscripts are hid. She had hinted as much, and I feel that she doesn't lie. I enjoy the luxuries, exotic foods, fine clothing, having servants to wait on me. I will travel at some point, but only when there is nothing more to be learned here. Try not to be too disgusted with me. Love, Tom. Shortly after Karam's return, Mari bought Farda, the tribe's midwife, to make her peace with the new shaman. Within minutes, the two were trading secrets of healing. The next day, Farda took over instructing the apprentices in herbs. From that moment on, most of the women made their peace with Alana and her young people. Some would never be won over and would always view the new ways with suspicion. But they were a minority. Knowing to whom she owed the new warmth, Alana tried to thank Marie Farrar. The old woman brushed her words aside. All things change, she told Alana frankly. It's not hurt men. It does not hurt men to know women have power too. Alana had to laugh. Until Mari and Farda entered her life, she never realized that the tribeswomen viewed their men not with fear, but with loving disrespect. Sometimes she felt that she was the one getting the education, not her pupils. Kara was just beginning to work under control of the wind when the men of the village went hunting for night raiders. Hillmen who carried off a herd of sheep and the boy tending them. Lana and Karam were teaching the boys archery when the lookouts sounded an alarm. Karam swore. They lured the men off a purpose. He turned to the boys. Let's see what your marksmanship's like on moving targets. What about their shamans? One woman cried. They attack first with magic. Alana could feel the unnaturalness of the fierce breeze. Kara, Karim, Ishak, she yelled, remembering too late they were in Farda's tent. Across the breadth of the village, it would cost precious moments to fetch them. The three apprentices ran up, panting, chasing Faithful. The cat said the hillmen are attacking and you want us, Ishak gasped. I don't know how we understood. I didn't understand anything, Karam pouted. You and Kara said... Hush, Alana ordered. She looked at Karam. I have to be a shaman, she began. The former guardsman was still instructing the boy archers as women and children streamed past them into Alana's big tent. Do what you must do, he said, tersely. He grabbed a strong young woman by the arm. Ye, grab a spear and stand to the defense. She stared at him for a moment, then ran to obey. The older men of the village, those who hadn't been included on the hunt, were already gathering around Karam. Accepting his leadership, more women were grabbing spears and axes, leaving their children to the charge of the others in the tent. Alana led her apprentices to a hill overlooking both the tents and the eastern approaches, from which the now shrieking winds came. Kara saw the attackers first, hidden behind a wall of dust. She pointed out 5 green-robed men astride ponies. Their shamans wear green too, she shouted over the wind. The dust before them is alive. When they came before, Aknan ibn Nazir could not fight them. The dust devils killed 3 men. I'm not Aknan ibn Nazir, Alana shouted back, drawing the crystal sword. She focused her attention on the length of the blade, holding it directly before her. Now was the time to put its energy to use. It would extend her ability to command things, to break and split, far more than she could have done normally. She shouted the spell, sending her energy streaking down the smoky blade and into the earth. Just a few yards in front of the oncoming raiders, the earth grumbled and cracked, forming a deep trench. Their own frontal vision ruined by the dust devils, the hillmen in the first rank rode into the trench. That'll stop him for a minute, Alana yelled. Kurem! Do you have some string? The girl pulled several husks of thread from her pocket. She was never without them these days. Try to hobble as many of their ponies as you can. Kurem grinned and started to work. Her heavy brows pulled together as she worked. Kara! Alana continued. Force the wind back into their faces. Both girls tore off their veils in order to see more clearly as Alana turned to her third apprentice. Ishak, do you remember how to throw fire? Yes, he cried. When they get close enough, scorch them out of their saddles. Ishak bellowed. What about the dust devils and their shamans? Leave them to me. The sound of the high winds changed. Kara was at work, her burdus whipping frantically around her. The first pony stumbled and fell, thanks to Karem, tossing his rider. Flames soared from Ishak's fingers, enveloping a big man. The hillmen were leaping their ponies over the trench. Once more, Alana pointed the crystals and sent her gift into the ground before the dust devils, breaking it open. The brown columns of dust passed over the second trench as easily as they had the first, and Alana turned her attention to them, reaching out with her mind to see what they were. They were mindless blots of energy, wielded by the shamans in collecting desert sand and dirt to give themselves shape. She knew better than to use a sword to split them in two. Then she would have twice as many dust devils to contend with. Instead, she sent a whip of violet fire at the shamans, determined to end the problem at its source. One dropped to the ground when her magic reached him, screeching in agony. A second streak of fire, red in color, picked off another shaman. Ishak had seen her purpose, and was helping. Berry-colored shields were forming around the remaining 3. The element of surprise was gone, and they were defending themselves. Now, Alana called up a sparkling amethyst-colored wall that encircled one of them, cutting off his hair. His pony panicked and reared, dropping him in the dirt as he fought to breathe. But she was sure of his death. Alana applied the same trick to another shaman. The remaining wizard was already fighting off Ishak's red flame, and losing. With the deaths of the last 2, the Dust Devils collapsed. Hillmen thundered past them. Their numbers reduced. Karam sagged and dropped, exhausted from the effort of maintaining 5 spells at once. Kara was looking white and ill, but with the deaths of the shamans, the wind had also stopped. Alana made her sit down. Ishak was still flaming the raiders, laughing merrily as he tried to put the flames out. Not quite the laugh track that one would want, but it works. It's beautiful, Alana, he cried loudly, not realizing the winds were caught. The power is beautiful. Look, Kara gasped, pointing to the west. Haunting clown laughter. Yes, that's exactly what I need to find. Aleph Sif and his men were riding furiously into the village, their swords ready, caught between Ishak, Karam, and the fiercely fighting old men, women, and the boys, as well as young warriors of the tribe. The hillmen didn't stand a chance. Alana picked off those who tried to escape, so that none survived the raid. The moment the fighting was over, Alana ushered her apprentices back to the well. Here, Farda was already putting women to work, cleaning and bandaging wounds. Alana made Kara and Karam sit, then briskly rolled up her sleeves. Anyone killed? She asked Farda, washing her hands. The big midwife shook her head. Assam and Mikal are the worst hurt. Assam with a head wound, Mikal with an open gash on his thigh. Will you see to one? Alana nodded and entered her immense tent, feeling Ishak behind her. The wounded lay quietly on the carpets, placed before the plain altar, waiting for someone to see to their hurts. Clearly, Farda had taught the women how to care for injuries, because every matron in the village was cheerfully at work. Some of the hurts, such as Hassam, were boys, but they were as silent as the men, and Alana knelt beside Hassam, smiling at him. A wide-eyed girl, not long a wife, hurried to stand beside her with a basin of hot water and clean bandages. Alana dipped one in the water, using it to carefully rinse Hassam's wound clean. What happened to the hillman who gave you this? She asked jokingly. Is his spirit looking for a place to rest? Karam caught him down while I fought him, the boy replied, wincing as she gently pulled up his hair away from the wound. He said, honor is not necessary when fighting thieves. I'll need healing salve, thread, and a fine, very fine needle. Tell Farda, Alana instructed the waiting girl, who nodded and hurried off. Alana examined the wound closely. I think Karam told me the same thing when I was your age. That wasn't so long ago. Hold still. She closed her eyes and reached out into his body, searching out the full extent of the wound's damage. She grimaced inwardly at the sick feeling in the boy's skull. He had a bad concussion. Still, it could have been far worse. The bone was uncracked, and there was no bleeding in his brain. She squeezed the boy's hand. You bruised your head, she told him, knowing he would have no idea what concussion meant. You'll be dizzy and sick for a while, and you'll have trouble standing, so don't try it. Now. I'm helping you sleep so I can sew your wound in peace, alright? Sam nodded, his large eyes full of trust. She placed her hands on his once more, reaching for the warm fire of her gift. This time it flowed softly and peacefully down her arms, making her feel nearly as relaxed as the boy, who went to sleep instantly. She stopped for a moment and sighed before pulling her mind back to her surroundings. The girl had returned with the materials she needed. Deftly, Alana thrust undyed thread through the needle's eye. Glancing at the watching Ishak, she said, "Make yourself useful, will you? Hold him." The young vizier obeyed, holding the sleeping boy's head gently but firmly between his hands. "Won't it hurt?" he asked, apprehensively as Alana tested the needle's point. "Ouch!" "Not now. Not after I've used the gift to put him to sleep. Steady." Quickly, she set her stitches, thanking the gods yet again for the training she had received from the palace healers during the Tusain War. The stitches in, she cut the thread and bandaged the wound, using the healing salve and a clean bandage. Finally, she replaced Ishak's hands with her own. Assam never stirred. His slumber deepened as she used her gift again, shoving back the damage done by Hillman's axe. Dimly, she could hear Faithful yowling behind her, but her mind was fixed on her work. When she had aided nature all she could, she released Hassam into a real sleep. With luck, he would be well soon, with an interesting scar for the maidens to admire. She stood, her ears roaring. Preoccupied by Hassam's injury, she thought at first she had risen too quickly. Then the sick, weak feeling swelled up from her midsection, and she swore even as her legs buckled. The excitement of light fighting, of keeping control over the crystal sword, of her worry over the tribe's young ones, she had overextended, using more of her gift than she could afford to give away. "I'll never learn," she thought ruefully, as she fainted. It was fully dark when she woke. Faithful was howling urgently right into her ear, and a slim hand gripped her shoulder, shaking her. Warily, she opened her eyes, trying to focus without much success. "It's really better if you let me rest," she muttered. "I just overdid it a little, that's all." "Faithful says to wake you," Kara apologized. "He says it's a shock." A bolt of alarm shot through Alana, and she fought to sit up. Bone-deep weariness tugged at her like chains, trying to drag her down. "Ishak? Bless him, what's he doing now?" Her alarm was even greater when she realized that the ember at her neck was warm. No, hot. "He has the sword," Faithful cried. "Well, the tribe met with a voice. He came here and took the sword." Her heart thudding sickly, Alana lurched to her feet. Her head spun. She held it, forcing her eyes to remain open. She was in no shape for a showdown. Gripping the Ember Stone, she sent a plea to the goddess for Ishak's sake. Strength washed into her, steadying her shaking limbs. Closing her eyes, she reached out, searching for a sign. Any sign of her wayward apprentice. Her mind touched the web of magic that was the crystal sword, as it vibrated with new heights of fury. The weapon had come to accept her commands, just barely. But it would never accept Ishak. Opening her eyes, she raced toward the hill where they had found the raiders that morning. He was shining in his own red fire, a sheathed sword in his hand. An orange glow surrounded the weapon, battling with the young man's magic. For a second, Alana's mind flickered, and Ishak was replaced by a vision.
And as yours,
And as your sky rapidly clouded over with thunderheads, a pole thrust against it like a pointing finger. At its base, a fire burned, and the woman tied to the pole screamed in agony. The vision was gone, and she could hear her apprentice clearly once more. Ishak! No! Alana yelled hoarsely. She reached out, but the bolt of power she threw at him was thin, and it vanished far short of the mark. She would never reach him in time. Don't! Sword! It'll turn on you! Why should you have it? Woman who rides like a man, he yelled back, triumphant. You won't even use it. You don't use your own gift as much as you should. You don't deserve to have more. I deserve the sword. I want the power. Then why didn't the sword come to you instead of me? Alana cried, hoping to keep him talking. She was at the hill's base now. You can't use this power, Ishak. The sword has been warped. No! Ishak drew the sword, holding it aloft. Orange fire shimmered around the shining gray of the blade, pulsing fiercely. He laughed and pointed the sword at Alana, speaking a word she couldn't hear. Instinctively, she threw all the strength the goddess had given her into a shield. She had wanted only to defend herself, but the sword's magic reflected back from her protection, enveloping Ishak in a ball of flame. He screamed once. Then he was gone. Tears streaming down her cheeks, Alana trudged up the hill. There was nothing left of Ishak or of the scabbard he had carelessly thrown on the ground. Wiping her eyes on her sleeve, she wished he could have listened to her just one more time. The tribespeople were waiting for her when she descended, the crystal blade shimmering in her hand. What will you do now? Halef inquired softly. I'm going to finish training your 2 shamans. That's what I'm going to do, she replied grimly. What else is there? I am going to take a quick break to go get some water so my voice doesn't die. I'll be back in a minute, maybe 2. Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope you managed to at the very least got up and had a stretch. If you've ever never tried like just like a sparkle, actually I guess it is it's a 0-calorie soda. Oh wait, she's also caffeine free. I was like, wait, is it caffeine? I don't want to be drinking caffeine this late at night. But apparently it's not caffeine free. It is caffeine free. Wow, words. It's called Zevia. It's a 0-calorie soda with no sugars, no artificial sweeteners, but it's fairly tasty for I've only ever tried their black cherry though. I know they have a Coke or Pepsi one, and like the cola variant as well as other flavors. It has stevia, hence the name. Yeah. I don't normally like any diet drinks, but this is like the first one I've actually grown to like. Yes, stevia. Yeah, I think like I know there's a lot of sugar replacement stuff. I don't know if it's frowned upon, but there's always something about it that you hear about. But at the same time, it's like too much sugar is also bad for you too. So it's like, it's tasty. Yeah, most others the thing is, most others that use stevia I've never actually really liked, but this one I do. So I have tried others that had stevia in it, and I never didn't like it. But this one was like, I actually like it. So, woohoo! I just remembered I had a box of those in the fridge. So I was like, instead of water, let's have that. And then I freaked out that there might have been caffeine in it, but no, there isn't. So yay. It's weird that this is actually the first time I found my computer room isn't too warm, and I at a point where I actually want it to be a bit warmer just for my snake, because I have my snake enclosure in computer room with me. I'm gonna change the song because those ringing reminds me too much of my tinnitus. I'm like, am my tinnitus getting really bad or what? But yeah, it's just try to get that comfortable heat range in where I don't find it too hot, but it's not too cold for Snake. It's gonna be interesting, which is why I have her in the computer room, because that's always been the warmest room of my place. And I have the door closed to the cats when I'm not in it, so the cats don't bother to freak out Snake when I'm not around, and I can't monitor their interactions. Because yesterday I had the snake out, which when you get a new snake, you're not supposed to interact with them the first week of getting them, to let them get used to their new environment. But of course, it was cold, so I wanted to help it warm up my own body heat. And cats were actually completely ignored. I don't think I even noticed I had the snake in my hat, snake with me. Like even Ross had jumped up beside me and then got a little pet and then jumped off. It was like ours. It was a snake that was aware of cat, but it didn't do anything with the cat. But like because I kind of, it was probably, and so when I said snake, it did do like a little bit of a lunge, but defensive lunge, but expected. It didn't bite or anything. It just kind of just as like a defensive, like, I don't like that. Yeah, my first snake. I've always ever wanted a snake, and almost doesn't like snakes. And I convinced her just because it's like, well, my plans had been when I move out, I'll get a snake, no matter what. And then it was like, now we bought a condo together, so now my name is also on the lease, not the lease, the title of the land, of the, not necessarily the land, but the condo. The land is a lot more than just this condo. I was like, I want a snake. Not the best timing for it, but I didn't choose the timing of the Reptile Expo, and I thought I was relatively safe going there because I was short on money. Most snakes range from 200 and up, and then I found someone who's like, $25 snake. And then they sold that one. Like, oh, we'll give you this $75 snake for 50. Okay. And today I walked over to like a dollar store to buy plants, like fake plants and stuff to put into the enclosure. So there's a lot more. Right now it's very bare, which I know is also will add to stress of snake. So I'm gonna try decorate it up a bit carefully without try to decorate it up a bit without stressing snake further. But at the very least, the cool ambient temperature in the room is within the cool side for snake, but then I actually have a heater that's working. So yay. I think that one I don't like. That's the only thing I like the temperature for. Okay. Sorry, I guess I went into a tangent. My head is like, I didn't remember the temperatures I had set. Anywho, shall continue with chapter 6. I'm good. I just kind of started going into a like different focus rabbit hole. I'm like, wait, I'm streaming. I should be doing something else. I should be reading or talking or not looking up information. Although, funny enough, I also went to the dollar store specifically to get a spray bottle to mist inside the enclosure, It's something that you always find at a dollar store. It's just a mist spray bottle, right? And nope, not one. Like, not even a one I just didn't like the looks of or use of, but always not a single one. So I need to... That's just the one that's in walking distance to me, so... Need to get Mom to drive me someplace to pick up one. I do have one I'd gotten when we got cats. And then it's tainted with not tainted, but peppermint and vinegar, so I've been using it to dissuade spiders from entering my place. Anywho, let's continue with chapter 6, ceremonies. The first of the Bazir shamans arrived a week after Ishak's fatal mistake with his crystal blade. Excuse me. They told Alana they had come to teach and to learn, that every wise shaman tried to study new things. They meant what they said, and they were not alone. Within days, more arrived at with their apprentices until, with Alana, Kara, and Karem, 14 shamans and 6 apprentices were trading spells in the tents of the Bloody Hawk. You should be pleased, Ali Muktab remarked one night as he and Alana sat up late. You have done more than most Bazir have accomplished in a lifetime. You have made girls shaman. You have begun a school for magic that will live and grow to become the greatest such school in existence. Even priests from the city of the gods will come, even the warrior sorcerers of Karthak. Alana stared at the voice of the tribes. He had that misty, far-seeing look in his dark eyes that privately gave her the crawls. You knew this school was going to happen? She gasped. And you never said anything? Anything? He smiled and puffed on his long-stemmed pipe. I have learned, as all who would become the voice must learn, to keep my silence about the future. It will happen without my help. Alana snorted and thought about it for long, silent moments. At last, she pointed out, I still haven't gotten Kara and Karem to leave off their face veils. She didn't discuss it with the girls any longer, because it was a subject they could not agree on. They are right, Biktab pointed out. They have overcome too many old ideas, but this one they can never change. A woman without a veil is a woman of bad repute among the tribes. Good women may not speak to her, and good men may not know her. Alana thought of the woman of the court of the rogue and sighed. That's sad. Some of the most intelligent women I knew as I was growing up were prostitutes. I didn't know many noble ladies well, you see. Suddenly the ground beneath her trembled, and she looked up. Visitors? At this hour? Grinning, McDobb knocked the ashes from his pipe into the fire. I think you will like these visitors. They emerged from the tent to find the tribesmen gathered around the newcomers. These were 5. 2 riders from the tribe, a man-at-arms from Inbarony Allow colors, and, to Alana's joy, Miles of Allow and Prince Jonathan. Somehow she greeted her guests and introduced them to the headman, the voice, and the visiting shamans, and the apprentices. Jonathan captivated Karem, while Kara watched Miles with awe-widened eyes. Once the knight smiled at her, saying, There's a dancing bear in chorus who's almost as shaggy as I am. Kara blushed beneath her veil and fled. The nobleman greeted Alana and Karam with warmth. reaching across carefully maintained distances to shake hands. A guest tent was prepared for the newcomers, but somehow, when it came time to retire, the prince followed Alana to her home. Once inside the tent, they were alone. Even Faithful had found someplace else to be. For long moments, they stared at each other. The short, red-headed, violet-eyed woman in the vizier's pale blue robe, its hood thrust back from her hair, and the tall, broad-shouldered young man, his hair coal black, his eyes a brilliant sapphire blue. He wore serviceable tan breeches and a cotton shirt beneath a tunic of his favorite royal blue. But only a blind man would not have seen his royal heritage. "I didn't want to disgrace you in front of the tribesmen," he said at last, his deep voice making her shiver happily. "Miles said women don't touch men in public." "No," she replied, twisting her hands in her robe. Awkward. He tried again. "I'm going to be here for a while. Ali McTabb says there is much I have to learn." "Do their majesties know you are where you are?" He shrugged. "They know I am with Miles. I told them I had to get away from the court. I'm tired of people fawning all over me." He smiled. "No one argues with me now that you're gone." Troubled by the arrogant tone of his voice, the flash of pride in his eyes, she asked, "Is that the only reason you came? To get away from home?" "Of course not." Suddenly he swore, covering the space between them in two great strides. He seized her and held her tight, burying his face in her shoulder. Lana threw her arms around his neck. This was the Jonathan she loved. He forced her to look at him. "I miss you so much," he whispered. He kissed her fiercely. She returned the kiss, feeling heat rush through her at his touch. He bore her down to her sleeping mat. In the time that followed, they knew they still desired each other. Afterward, Alana got up to blow out the lamps. He watched her as she moved around the tent. "What are you grinning about?" he wanted to know as she doused the last light. "Ew, smut. It's ew, hetero smut." Just got done getting freaky with an elf. See, you like smut. Don't deny it. She lay down and snuggled up against his shoulder, smiling contently. "Well, women of bad reputation go without veils amongst the Bazier," he confided. "All this time I haven't worn a veil, but it took me until tonight to get a bad reputation." Dawn chuckled and kissed her. "I'm glad to hear that. I was worried about you, among all these handsome men." That's my friend is. And I mentioned how I wanted to get frisky with a bear, and they were shocked because they're generally so non-spicy about things. Well, do they not know what you like to roleplay? If I was in a creative mindset, I try to be. Do they not know what you draw? I mean, I think you've drawn more porn-related stuff than non-porn-related stuff. They're not used to my. It's okay if it's not me having smut. But if it's your... Like me wanting to view people getting frisky doesn't mean I want to get frisky. Yeah. Although that does kind of take away the immersion of the story. Like, if you're playing Baldur's Gate character as yourself, does that is this kind of you kind of remove some of the immersion by treating them as someone else, someone different than you, in that sense. Sort of like an OC, yeah. It's still then becomes more. You're not playing as yourself. You're playing as an onlooker for everything, right? But yeah. Getting into a Vaughn's headspace, but doesn't mean it wants to be bullied. True. I have an OZ like Gats. Yes. Yeah, I get it. Getcha. Okay. Where was I? John chuckled. Blah, 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 blah. Right. Among all these handsome men. Excuse me. The carbonation's making me burp. You didn't have to, he grinned. They respect me as a shaman and a warrior, but they don't even remember I'm a woman most of the time. Silly of them, John whispered. I can't forget it. Not that I haven't tried these past months. I'm sure you have, Alana drawled, remembering how the women of the Tartalan court always flocked around her prince. For a while, they were silent in the dark, thinking and being content just to hold each other. Then Alana ventured. John? I intend to become the voice of the tribes. He stroked her hair. Alana sat up. How did you know that was what I wanted to ask? She could feel his shrug. I just did. Slowly, she lay back down. Ali McDobb said the ceremony is dangerous. I need the power I can get from it. The Bazir are incredible people, Alana. Their history is as old as ours. Older. And we lose too many men to the Bazir. It will be better for everyone if they take part in Tartal, instead of tying up our armies within our own borders. I've been happy among them, she admitted. I'll be glad when they aren't at war with our soldiers. Have you been so content that you won't consider leaving? Alana stiffened, feeling wary. I have to bring Kara and Karem through the rite of shamans before I can go. Why? Once that's done, I'd hoped you would come home. I doubt that the scandal over my fight with Duke Roger has died down, she reminded him. He silenced her with a hand over his lip. Over her lips. Come as my betrothed. The word lay between them, growing larger and larger. Finally, Alana gasped, John, I can't. Why not? Because I'm a scandal. I killed your cousin. For 6 years, I was disguised as a boy. I knew what you were, for most of that time. You should marry a princess who'll bring you power and gold, she went on. That's your duty. And you should marry a virgin. You were a virgin when we first made love. No one else knows that, she cried, frustrated, remembering the tense, thin walls. She lowered her voice. You'll say I was in bed with a whole regiment behind your back. Do you think your friends will permit that kind of talk? You have more friends at court than you know. As to my marrying someone who will bring me power, what of you? You're a woman knight and a Bazir shaman. I can marry the daughter of Bazir chief and not gain as much stature as I will if I marry you. Besides, he went on, his voice suddenly hard, I'm tired of worrying about such things. I want what I want, not just for what's good for Total. I've spent my entire life watching what I say and do for fear of upsetting the merchants, the gallons, or the priests, or anyone. They should worry about upsetting me, not the other way around. Hey, Orange Cat! Hey, how are you doing? What's up? John is very cringy. He is becoming the spoiled brat we all know he is. I'm doing good. Okay, yay, that's good. And my brain just did a brain fart. I went like, wait, is enjoying my day off before new work week. Oh, hey, that's always good too. Having some time off. I've just returned to work after surgery. Today was my third day back to work officially. And like I feel like half of it I slept through a bit. I lay down for a nap at lunch and then woke up late, but part of why I'm kind of like working from home for the last 2 weeks of my sick leave the doctor gave me, so I can kind of like do things like that. Surgery? Yeah. I had a full histo and gallbladder removed on the same day. I had a month off, and I had a month off of work, and now I'm on the last 2 weeks of sick leave. Which reminds me, today's tea day. I'll do that after stream. I'm very, very bad at remembering it. I wish tea could be taken as a pill daily, such as like estrogen can for trans women, because that would be so much easier than remembering weekly. And or in my case, I've made it twice a week to like be less likely for me to forget too much. You have alarms and you use needle? Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. That just makes sense too. I'm doing twice a week, every 3 days. Well, 3.5-ish days, or as close to as I can. Because weekly just doesn't work, and I'm very bad at not listening to alarms. I'll be like, yeah, okay, yeah, today's that. If I'm doing this right now, I'll do it after, and then forget. And so I'm doing it twice a week just to kind of make it more often in my mind and keeping my levels more stable. So you need someone to adult you about it in person. Yes. I was really good at it in the beginning. Probably maybe for the first for 2022 I was good at it. And it just occurred to me like just the other day that I've been on in the trans guy meeting I go to, support group meeting I go to on every month. I like someone had asked me like I hadn't been there since I had started going. Had asked me like how long I've been on T. I'm like, oh, since February, or no, since May. And then I'm like, after, and then a week later, I'm like, no, I've been on it longer than May 2023. I realized that I've been on it for over a year now. But between pandemic and everything else, my sense of time just went completely skewed. But like, I was good with it for the first maybe year on a weekly basis. But yeah, I think in general I gotten really bad at taking my meds is more the problem. Like I'm still really bad at taking like my blood pressure meds and antidepressants. Which the antidepressant hasn't really been working too much, so but yes, I very much need people to be. I'm not sure if it's not working like so much as I am hydrating. Thanks for redeeming hydrate. Stretch. Yeah. I hate that I had to like censor my own my own that's still not working apparently. I'm sorry. You need to take care of the Tamagotchi. Yeah. Ow. Hey, is headpat working? Headpat isn't working. Lovely. Darn it. Oh, there we go. You safe. It's a different glove. Need protection, don't you know? No, I fixed the Birdo one last time. This. License. Verb. Yeah, text to speech isn't working right now either. Yay. Derp. Okay, enough headpats. Ow. I know why text to speech isn't working right now too, but I'll make sure it's working before for next time. It's after our move, everything kind of broke. And I still need to fix everything. I still need to bring my consoles up to the computer room. Right now, they're still set up in the living room because I was playing games on the big screen. I started yet another Animal Crossing island and haven't touched it for a week now. But I am not going to restart that one because I haven't really done much with it yet. So yay. Ouch. Okay. Merp. Okay. That works. Okay. Okay. And Snoop. Is that why you're asking me to marry you? She whispered. Because you want to prove to everyone you don't care? For a long moment, he didn't reply. When he spoke, his voice was very low. I thought you loved me, Alana. Eh. Stab, stab. Stop the manipulation. I do, she whispered fiercely. I do, but... What he had said, the resentment in his voice, worried her. And how could she explain that it was wonderful not to have to trouble herself over court plots and plotters? Not to have to watch how she acted or what she said, apart from not offending her new tribe. For the first time, she could be fully and completely Alana. She was still learning just who Alana was. Marry me, sweet one, he whispered. I love you. I want you for my wife. It was too much all at once. Let me think about it, she begged. I do love you, John. I just need time. All right. His voice sounded amused as they went to sleep. Lana wondered, just what is so funny? As usual, she rose with the dawn. John continued to sleep. She dressed quietly and went into the temple portion of her tent. Miles was already there, looking as fresh as he ever did in the morning. Alana hugged her old friend tightly, and together they walked out into the sunlight. She showed him the village, even taking him up to the hill where she had faced the hillmen with her apprentices, and where Ishak had met his doom. She said nothing about Jonathan's proposal, half hoping that if no one mentioned it, John might reconsider. Why did you come? She asked as they climbed down the hill. I thought it might be better for Jonathan if someone bore him company. You're always so sensible, Alana grinned. She waved to Mari, who was opening the sides of her tent to the morning air. Mari Farrar, she explained to Miles. She's the best weaver in the tribe. She's teaching me. Miles chuckled, his green-brown eyes dancing with amusement. Women's work, Sir Knight? Alana blushed deeply. You don't want to be ignorant. Miles hugged her around the shoulders. You're brave to admit you don't know everything and then do something about it. It's all very well, but I'm a terrible weaver. I am told practice helps, he said, his eyes still amused. Alana, I actually came here for 2 reasons. Oh? You're keeping John company. What's the second one? Miles tugged his beard thoughtfully. I've been thinking about your situation now that Tom is at court and you are roaming. He put his hand on her shoulders. I believe you know that I have always been very fond of you. Coming off in another proposal. This almost sounds like it's something similar from a very much older gentleman, but she smiled. You're the only one who's ever forgiven me for lying about what I really am. I knew long before you told me, remember? Listen to me now. Tom lives well at court. He's entitled, Alana pointed out, bristling at her brother's defense. He is the Lord of Chapond. He lived like a priest for years. I don't question his rights to do so. I am concerned about you. If you continue to travel, you will need funds to stay at inns, to give bribes. Don't frown. Some nations use a bribe to support the national treasury. Now, consider my problem. I'm not getting any younger. I'm unwed and unsociable. It's not likely that I shall marry and have children. You've been like a daughter to me, sometimes even like a son. His eyes twinkled. I want to make you my heir. Alana opened her mouth to reply, but no sound emerged. Her throat felt tight and closed. Her eyes burned with tears. He clapped her on the shoulders and let her go. No need to answer right away. I can't refuse, she whispered, hugging him fiercely. Miles, how do I thank you? He tousled her hair. Nonsense. I get an heir who knows how to manage the state after all the time you ran your bond for your brother. With Karam's help, she reminded him. With Karam's help, but you made the big decisions. I know you'll care for Barony Allow as I do. He rubbed his hands together. Now, that's decided. What about some food? Elena was washing up after breakfast when Farda sought her out. I wish to speak with you privately, and I believe you will be needed elsewhere when I am finished. Wait, no, wrong voices. Blah. Blah. Suddenly I'm a vampire. Blah, I'll drink your blood. Sorry, I have to laugh at my own jokes, otherwise no one will laugh. It's very new. Well, it is spoopy time of year. It is true. Maybe I should try do another run of the Last of Us, or do an Undead Dawn. Oh, what was the game name now? Until Dawn. Dead by Daylight. I mean, I've read it on stream before. But yeah, we can do it again. Alana was washing up after breakfast when Farah sought her out. I wish to speak with you privately. I believe you will be needed elsewhere when I am finished. Alana told Imarkam, the oldest and most respected of the shamans, who now ran their school. He nodded, and she left her tent, which was filled with visiting shamans, apprentices, Jonathan, and Miles. Farah took her to her own home, passing a cup of tea on the night. It is the voice of the tribes, she said abruptly, her plain face worried. He is ill. My knowledge is not great enough that I can tell what is wrong. But he is sick, I know. He had made me promise to say nothing to you before, but I cannot remain silent. Alana frowned. She thought Ali McTabb had looked pale when she had encountered him lately. Such meetings had always occurred at night. She had been blaming flickering torch and firelight. I'll need my healer's bag, she murmured. Farda handed it to her silently. She must have gotten it from one of the girls. Why did you come to me? Surely one of the visiting shamans. Farda drew herself up, insulted. You are the shaman for the Bloody Hawk. Do I tell all those guests that our shaman is not good enough for the voice of the tribes? Alana grinned. Sorry I asked. Ali McDobb grimaced as she entered his tent. No woman, not even Farda, can keep silence, he grumbled. He was pale and sweating as he reclined in his bed. Alana knelt beside him and opened the cloth bag in which she kept her healing materials. Farla did the right thing. Hush. Examination was brief. All she had to do was reach into him with her gift. Death was there, black, ugly, and ravaging, rooted in his chest. She sat back on her heels, her own face as white as his. "You've known about this for a while," she accused. "There's no way you could not have known." "It is given to the voice to see his ending," he agreed. "Why did you let it go?" she demanded, sick at heart. She liked Ali Maktab. Any raw shaman could have slain it at the start. "It is my time," the voice replied tiredly. "I will not fight it. If you had, you'd be healthy today." He smiled. "Poor woman who rides like a man. You know so much, and nothing at all." "I can do little now," she told him quietly. "The illness is too far along." She took his hand, his image blurred by tears. "I'm sorry, Ali Muhtab." He squeezed her hand in reply. "Can you help me with the pain? I must teach Prince Jonathan our laws." She nodded. Slowly she reached out with her gift, his violet fire streaming into his body. Through their combined hands, the wrinkles smoothed out of the voice's face, and he slept. Shaking her head to clear it, Alana busied herself mixing herbs into a small jar. She looked up at Farda. "When he wakes, give him tea made with just a pinch of this," she whispered. "No more than that. It's very strong. And each morning he'll need me for the spell." Farda stopped her as she made for the door. "How much longer?" the midwife asked, her dark eyes large with hurt. Alana shrugged, feeling tired and overburdened. "I don't do anything unnatural." "He has another month," she said bluntly. She walked into the bright sunshine. If anyone saw her wiping her streaming eyes, she could blame it on the light. The new guests began to arrive within days of Jonathan's coming. These visitors were headmen and leaders of the Bazaar, lawmakers and law enforcers. It was clear to everyone that they had come to look over the man who proposed to be the voice. And it was equally clear they were unhappy with what they saw. The son of the hated Northern King. It was not a Bazaar. Real trouble did not begin until Aman Kamal, headman of the Sunset Dragon tribe, joined them. Alana noticed him following Jonathan and Ali Miktab during the day, and her instincts for such things warned her of trouble. She recognized the considering look in Kamal's eyes as he listened to Jonathan answering Miktab on points of Bazaar law, as if the Bazaar were weighing the prince and finding him wanting. Still less did she like the way other men drew Kamal aside to talk to him. This tall, brawny headman was clearly a leader, and his appearance was causing many other Bazaar to unburden themselves to their doubts about Ali Maktab's choice. "There's going to be trouble," Alana told Jonathan as they washed up for the evening meal. Amon Kamal, I'd bet on it." John drew himself up, clearly offended. "Are you hinting that I can't take care of myself? I'll thank you to remember that I was a knight when you were still a squire. My squire." "What's the matter with you these days?" Alana cried, exasperated. "Excuse me very much, your royal highness. I wasn't aware I was questioning your skill in the manly art of self-defense. I was silly enough to worry you might get hurt. Forgive me. Permit your highness's humble servants to remind you that these people play for keeps." She hurled down her towel and marched outside, clenching her jaw until it hurt. John had been sharp-edged since his arrival, almost as if he had to prove something to himself, or to her. She didn't like it. At the palace, the only thing it seemed necessary to prove was mutual passion. That part of their love remained. But sometimes now, when he talked, She wanted to cover her ears and shut out his voice. Which of us has changed? She wondered as she sat down among the Vizier men. And in the mother's name, why? A moment or two later, Jonathan took his seat beside Ali Maktab. He looked at Alana and smiled, shaking his head. As if I were a willful child who'd thrown a very small tantrum, she told herself. She looked down at Faithful, who was settling himself for her. The cat's tail was twitching madly. He expected trouble as much as Alana did. Amon Kamel waited until the woman began to pass the food. Ali Maktab was offering a piece of his bread to Jonathan. The Sunset Dragon headman stood, pointing at the prince. I will not break bread with the son of the Northern King. What little talk there was died out completely. Miles, sitting beside Alana, whispered, I should have guessed. Slowly, Ali Maktab glanced up at the standing man. Have you a complaint to voice, Amon Kamel? He is not one of us. He has not won the right to sit with us in peace, or to take bread from the hand of the voice of the tribes. Let him prove himself before us all. In the combat. The combat has been demanded of Jonathan, who is the son of the Northern King. Ali Maktab said tonelessly, Who will speak against it? Before Alana could rise to her feet, Kara and Kurem gripped her shoulders, and Faithful jumped on her lap. Think, Miles hissed, talking fast. He's not accepted by them even as a warrior, let alone as the voice. If you interfere, they will always wonder if he lets others do his fighting. He was a full knight during the war with Hussein. He's no unblooded boy. He's never fought hand to hand outside the palace courtyards, Alana whispered, shaking. But George Cooper taught him as well as he taught you. Exercise your common sense, Alana. She knew Miles was right. That didn't help her as she watched John prepare. He stripped off his tunic, shirt, and boots, his face pale and set. Karam held his knife while he began his loosening up exercises. Amon Kamel was also stripping down to his loincloth, his dark face set. Muscle for muscle, he and John were equally matched, although the Vizier was a few inches taller. Alana shook off Kamara and Karem and went to crouch by the prince. Think about what you want to accomplish here, she whispered, forgetting the quarrel earlier. The Vizier are strict when it comes to their honor. Don't shame Kamel. He grinned up at her. What about shaming myself? She smiled back. You've yet to do that, Prince. Pardon my suggesting it. Perhaps now is not the time to start? He grabbed her hand and kissed it. You worry too much, Lady Alana. Standing, he accepted his knife from Karam, with a nod of thanks. Both men were ready, and Ali Maktab gave the signal to begin. Amon Kamel lunged forward, his knife drawing a bloody gash down Jonathan's chest. The prince faltered back, and the Vizier lunged again. Alana closed her eyes. There was a rumble of amazement, and she looked. Kamel's left arm was hung uselessly, blood dripping from the wound in his shoulder. Jonathan was crouched and circling. The Vizier charged forward, and Alana blinked. Jonathan lunged back and forward again, his left foot connected solidly with Kamel's chest. The Vizier fell to the ground in the garage. Weakly he struggled to his feet, just as Jonathan lunged for him again. His right fist weighted with the dagger hilt lashed forward in another movement, too quick for Alana to follow, striking Kamel squarely on the chin. The Vizier dropped and laid still, knocked unconscious. Ali Maktab came forward. He is yours to kill, the voice commented, his face revealing none of his feelings. Around them, the Vizier men, guests of the Bloody Hawk alike, were silent. You have won. It is your right. Jonathan shook his head. Amanka Male was honest in expressing his doubts. Were I in his place, I'd have done the same. I can't kill a man for not liking me, although I can hope he will change his mind when he knows me better. Men came forward and carried the still unconscious headman out of the circle, back to his own tent. Those who remained watched Jonathan thoughtfully. Karam rushed forward with a drying cloth, and Kara handed Alana her healer's bag. She started to work on Jonathan's chest wound. The blood from it was already clotting. "How did I do?" John said, panting, accepting a skin of water from Karam. "Where did you learn to fight like that? Where did you learn that kind of fighting, kicking, and that style of punching?" she demanded, rubbing the salve into the gash. "George never taught you to fight like that." Jonathan smiled at her. "About a month after you left, a Shang warrior called the Wolf came to stay at the palace. I've been studying with him. I just never thought what he taught me would be useful so soon." "Shang warriors are tricky," Ram admitted, "but this one did well by you." "What's a Shang warrior?" Kara whispered to Alana. "They're trained to fight from childhood," Miles answered. "They can handle all manner of weapons as if born holding them, but they're deadliest with their bare hands and feet. The men and women." "And women?" gasped Karem, surprised. "Not many women survive the Shang way of life, but those who do are as legendary as the men," Miles replied. "As I was saying, they set great store by personal honor and skill, always seeking new challenges and never staying long in one place." "Like Alana," Kara pointed out. "Very like," Miles agreed, smiling slightly. Alana finished bandaging the prince. It was funny to hear Miles teaching the girls much as he had taught her. She stitched the bandage closed as Ali Maktab came over to them. "You have earned your way among the Bazir, Jonathan Abmonte," he said formally. "Will you join with our people now?" Jonathan nodded, standing. "What must I do?" Alana, Miles, and the others watched as Jonathan underwent the ceremony that bound him to the Bazir and the desert. Only a fool would not have noticed that the Bazir were less happy with Jonathan's becoming a Bazir than the men of the Bloody Hawk had been when Alana had joined them. They were quiet as Ali Maktab cut John's arm and his own. And there was no feast afterward. "They welcomed you, didn't they?" John asked as Alana when they were in bed. "Bah." "Yes," she whispered. "You're still not convinced I'll be a good voice of the tribes." "I'll simply have to prove it with my actions," he commented. He hugged Alana close. "I know I've been a bit difficult to be around lately," he confessed. "I've been hemmed in and proper all my life. Lately it's been bothering me. I want to break loose and do all the things I'm not supposed to. I'll probably never do them, and right now I'm fighting it. Do you understand that?" "No," Alana replied frankly. "I've spent all my life trying to avoid getting caught in just that kind of trap." "Well, my lovely INS, that's the trap I was born into. I'll get over this restlessness, I suppose. I really want to be a good king, and a good voice of the tribes." "Then you'll do it," she reassured him. "I don't doubt it for a minute." After Jonathan's initiation into the Vizier, Alana spent little time with Kara and Karem, leaving them to study with the visiting shamans. Her visits to Ali Maktab grew to twice a day, leaving her weary and sick each time. Only Farda and the voice himself knew what she was doing. During her free hours, she talked with Miles, learning all she needed to know about Barony Elau, even as John studied late with Maktab. At last, Miles admitted that Alana had nothing left to learn about his estates. If you don't mind, I'd like to formally adopt you here. The Vizier ceremony is simple and quite legal. He chuckled. I think your desert friends would be happy if you gained a father, even a disreputable one like me. Alana hugged him. She was discovering that each time she hugged Miles, it got easier. It was one of the many ways in which living as a girl was far more pleasant. Boys were not supposed to show affection openly. You weren't disreputable at all. Well, not that disreputable. If only you'd wear nicer clothes. Not as if you can't afford it. She had discovered Miles was far wealthier than she had dreamed. As a result of an unnoble-like interest in trade. But I'm comfortable this way, the knight pointed out. And he added shrewdly, of course, if you married John, I would have to dress up from time to time. Faithful uttered a small yelp as Alana stared at her friend. How did you know? I'm not blind. All the way down here, he was brooding. When he wasn't, he talked about why a prince marries. Oh. Alana fingered her ember stone. I told him I'd think about it. Why? I'm not sure he wants to marry me for the right reasons, she admitted. He seems angry that people expect him to behave a certain way because he's the prince. He calls it a trap he was born into. Picking up Faithful, Alana draped him around her shoulders. I don't blame him for wanting to rebel. That's one of the reasons I left courts. But I don't like the idea of his proving he's rebelling by marriage with me. That makes me into a thing that's evidence he can do what he wants. Instead of loving me as a person. He does love you, Miles pointed out. She sighed. I know he does. But I wonder if he'd have proposed if he weren't itchy. You know something else, Miles? Never liked people watching me and talking about me all the time. Even when we were young. Even when they were saying nice things. I still haven't learned to live with killing Roger. The cat thrust his nose into her ear. She winced. I like it here. The Vizier accepts me. I'm myself with them. Well, as much myself as anyone can be when they're a shaman and a warrior, and when they don't want to hurt people's feelings. Do you love John? Alana scratched Faithful's ears, her violet eyes sad. Love's wonderful, but it is not enough to keep us together for years of marriage. I'm not sure if I'm ready. I'm not sure if John's ready. I have to be sure if I want to marry Kingrold's heir. She smiled. Yes, I love him. That's the whole problem. He stood, putting a hand on her shoulder. The only advice I can give you, then, is to decide carefully. If you are so uncertain, you would make a bad decision if you marry now. No can always be changed to yes, but it's very hard to change yes to no. Come on, smile. Let's go see what your apprentices are up to. The apprentices were easy to find. All the shamans in the village, as well as Jonathan, Ali Mektab, Arda, and Halif Sif, were gathered around the well. In the open space before Ali Mektab's tent stood Kara, her veils whipping around her as she raised a rolling funnel of dust in the air before her. Alana had a grin with pride. The Vizier maiden had come a long way from being unable to control the winds she summoned. Then Karim stepped forward, a bit of thread in her hands. Her lips moving, she tied a complex knot in the thread. The twister, which had been slowly growing toward the sky, halted. Dust fell slowly down its sides and was scooped in once more. Karim grinned and tied a second, harder knot. The dust collapsed to the earth. The shamans applauded the two girls, who laughed and blushed behind their veils. They know as much as any shaman, Umar Calm told Alana. They must be initiated soon. Alana frowned. They're very young. If I leave, I'm afraid they'll get into trouble. The old man chuckled. You worry over them as the desert grouse worries over her chicks, he informed her. But you are right. A shaman who is too young can lead a tribe to grief. I believe Maman Padul would like to keep the principal shaman of my tribe. He nodded to the young man who had come with him, a handsome fellow who had a habit of watching Alana with admiration. If you wish, I will come to the Bloody Hawk and watch over your chicks, woman who rides like a man. I can oversee the school of shamans while the young ones tend to the needs of the tribe. Alana nibbled her thumb. I guess I'm worried that I'd be deserting my post, she admitted. Umar Calm shook his head. No one believes you will remain among us all your life. That you have stayed so long is an honor to our people. You may always return. Alana felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. If that is so, then I gladly accept your offer, she said. The full moon is in 5 days. The girls can be initiated then. Excellent. Umar Calm nodded. I shall tell the women of the tribe to prepare a feast. We will long remember. He was silent for a moment, then he drew her aside. Alana, how ill is the voice of the tribes? Alana glanced at Ali Maktab, who was leaning on a tall staff, his face grayish under his tan. Why do you ask? Shamans speak of it quietly among themselves. We have eyes and can see. He is dying, is he not? Alana nodded. Our people begin to suspect. When we commune with the voice, he feels old and tired. His mind is a disciplined one, and he lets nothing else through. But had you touched his thoughts when he was in his prime? I have never communed with the voice, she admitted. Umar Calm smiled. Of course not. You are afraid you will lose yourself if you join with another. Even if you join only in love, as with your northern prince. Does everyone know my business? She demanded tartly, just remembering to keep her voice down. The Bazir have clear eyes, Shaman replied, and the lords from the north both love you, each in his own way. It would be a fine thing for our people if the woman who rides like a man were to wed the voice of the tribes. And if I don't? She asked steadily. His face was surprised. Why, then you are still the woman who rides like a man, and he is still the voice. If he passes the rites, of course. Alana excused herself, seeing that Ali Maktab needed to go inside and lie down. If, indeed, she thought. That night, after the evening meal, Halif Sif took her aside. Sir Miles of Aloud tells me he wishes to bring you into his tent as his heir, he said. Alana nodded, and a smile brightened the headman's face. I feel strange saying he wishes you to be his daughter, since a daughter cannot inherit all the father owns among our people. He says to me you have been friends a long time. He taught me everything I knew about the Vizier before I came here, she said. In fact, he taught me a number of useful things when I was growing up. I'm honored that he wants to adopt me. Many strange things have happened to you since your birth, Aleph mused. I believe finding a father when you are grown is no stranger than any. Do you wish the ceremony to be tonight? Tonight? Why delay? You have your tribe around you, your prince, to give his blessing. Alana swallowed the lump that had formed in her throat. Why not tonight indeed, she said bravely. Will this be like the time I was adopted into the tribe? Exactly like, he admitted, as he ushered her back into the circle of the firelight. Alana looked at the scar on her wrist from her initiation with the tribe and grimaced. She was vain enough not to want any more scars than she had, but sensible enough to know she would probably collect more in the life that she had chosen. Alefsiev was holding up his hands, calling for everyone's attention. Miles stood, dusting off the back of his breeches. Tonight, the northerner called Miles Berlau, a friend of the Bazir, desired to take Alana of the Bloody Hawk into his tent as his daughter and heir. He waited for the surprised murmurs to end before speaking again. By our law, 7 men must witness this rite. Who will witness? Alana blushed as nearly every man in the circle volunteered. Alefsiev picked Ali Maktab, Jonathan Karam, Umar Kam, Gamal the smith. Alefsiev? Alana said nervously. The headman looked at her. I would like my apprentices to witness. Again there was a murmur. Women were not legally permitted to perform in ceremonies such as this. Alana clenched her teeth. If they were to be shamans, the girls would have to take part in every tribal activity. Kara and Karem hung back. The men urged them forward until they stood with the other witnesses. Alefsiev was heating his knife blade in the big fire. Roll up your sleeve and smile, Miles whispered as he did the same. Alana rolled up her right sleeve, thinking that it was not the same as receiving a wound in battle. On those occasions, it was often long moments before she even knew she was hurt. The excitement of fighting acted as its own pain-killing drug. Now, she could only brace herself as Alefsiev lightly cut Miles' wrist, then hers, pressing them together as blood welled out. Once again, Alana felt odd, joining magic as Alefsiev commanded. Become one with each other, with the Bazir, the desert we love. The combined drops fell, soaking into the sand as the tribesmen cheered. Now, was that so bad? Miles asked her as Farda bandaged them both. Alana grimaced and watched the witnesses sign the legal documents Miles had brought with him from Chorus. Then she realized she now had a father who loved her, and she laughed as tears ran down her face. Jonathan found her later as she struggled once more with the crystal blade, forcing another spot of evil out of the sword's makeup. She smiled up at him as he wiped sweat from her forehead with a cool cloth. I think that every time I do this, my gift gets stronger, she gasped. He frowned at her. Does it always tire you so much? When she didn't answer, he added softly, or does it tire you because you're wearing yourself out, keeping Ali Maktab alive? I have to do it. You're going to become the voice, she replied, putting the sword over in her fingers. That's what you want, and that's what he wants. I think you could probably handle this now. She offered it to him. It's not as bad as it was when I took it from Ibn Nazir. He took the weapon, his eyebrows lifting as he felt its power. It must have been terrible. She shrugged. I just wish I knew how it was related to Duke Roger. He returned the sword, hilt first, and she sheathed it. I was asking Miles about that. He reminded me of something. Did you know that Roger was a famous amateur jeweler when he was younger? She stared at him, eyes wide. No. He made hilts, pendants. I think he designed his sorcerer's rod. I believe the hilt for the sword is his work. And the blade, she wanted to know? He smiled grimly. I've been going through Roger's books and papers. Those I can find. I know more about him than I did when he died. Yes, my love. I believe that blade is his work too. I wish you were carrying lightning again. I do too. We'll just have to keep searching for a way to mend it. She sighed, then put the sword down and let him give her a hand up from the pillow on which she sat. She had been working before the altar. Now he led her back to the sleeping quarters. "Alana," he asked as she prepared for the night, "do you still wear that charm Mistress Cooper gave you to keep you from getting pregnant?" She showed it to him, hanging half hidden in the same chain that suspended her emberstone. "I never go without it. I trust you'll leave it off after we're married," he said with a yawn. "I don't want to have children just yet," she realized in a panic. Controlling her emotions, she replied dryly, "We're not married yet, my prince." He chuckled sleepily. "Of course not, my beautiful lioness. Come to bed." The day before the moon was full, Alana roused Kara and Karem before dawn. She rode with them as their sole escort to the nearest oasis. After saying prayers over them, she sent the girls into the chilly water for their ritual cleansing. They were silent throughout. Neither of them were permitted to speak until the night's ritual was over. Neither could use magic or perform any tasks apart from dressing. Silently, they returned to the camp and to Alana's tent, where they knelt before the altar, 2 pairs of eyes fixed on the lamp that burned there. Within moments, they were in a light trance. They would remain like this for hours, thinking about the life they were about to begin. The sun was rising when she entered Ali Maktab's tent. The voice was already awake, accepting a cup of tea from Farda. "And so, your 6 have begun the ritual." Alana made a face as she opened her healer's bag. Umar Khan's description of her apprentices was now known to the entire tribe. "How does that make you feel?" "As if I were taking the ordeal of knighthood all over again," he admitted, feeling for his heartbeat in his wrist. "How did you sleep?" "Do you expect me to say I slept as an infant does?" His sense of humor twinkled out of his 2 large eyes. His weight loss was now apparent to even the least observant members of the tribe, as was the grayish tinge of his skin. "I expect you will do me the credit of not lying about it." She placed both hands on his arm and drew a breath, readying herself to beat back the pain once more. Each time it got harder, for her, and for him. When she released him, she rocked backward and would have fallen if Farda had not caught her. She felt dizzy and sick. It was the way she always felt when she used the spell now, and she used it 3 times a day. She accepted the cloth Farda gave her and wiped her forehead. Already, Maktab's eyelids were drooping. "How much longer must Jonathan study?" she rasped, her voice as sick as the rest of her. "When will he be ready?" She had to place her ear by the dying man's mouth to hear what he was saying. "In the dark of the moon, 14 days. What if he fails? The thought was horrible. If he failed, John would be dead, and Ali Maktab. The voice struggled to smile. "Then I will wait to die. Alana, yes?" Aknan ibn Nazir survived the rite of shamans. Your chicks will do well. The light of the full moon turned the desert sands an eerie white. A fit setting for an initiation, I suppose, Alana thought as Imarakam read the list of gods given honor by the Vizier. The girls knelt in the sand, encircled by witch fires that glowed. Alana's violet and Imarakam's blue-green. Both apprentices looked tired but serene, and Alana felt proud of them. They'll be good for the tribe, she realized, even if they do not want to keep their face. Even if they do want to keep their face veils. Murakam finished the names of the gods and nodded to Alana. She stretched out her hands to the girls, conscious that everyone who had come to the tents of the Bloody Hawk in recent days was watching. The circle of fire lay solidly between Alana and her apprentices. "If you are pure in heart and strong of will, come forth," she summoned, using words Umar Khan and the other shamans had taught her that very day. Kara stood. For a moment she faltered, seeing the magical flames rear higher than her head. Then her mouth firmed, and she walked through the ring. Karam followed without hesitation. Alana and Umar threw up balls of light, and Alana summoned the apprentices again. If you will do as the gods require, come forth. The girls walked through the light together. Kara slowed, nearly stopping for a moment, but both emerged. Alana and Umar created a deep trench in the ground before them. For the third time, Alana summoned. If you will do your duty by your people and your tribe, come forth. This task was the hardest, but it required the most determination. Few sorcerers lifted themselves from the ground. It cost too much strength to go a very short distance. Alana doubted that she could do it, drained as she was by keeping Ali Miktab alive. Karam hesitated, fighting to strengthen her resolve. She was forbidden to use thread, or to move rocks to fill the trench. She had to fly over it. Kara stepped forward, her lower lip between her teeth. Very slowly, she floated across. She was nearly on the other side when Karam flew to catch up. Both of them collapsed on the ground, exhausted. They stirred only when Umar lifted Karam as Alana lifted Kara. You are now shamans of the Bazir, Alana told her apprentices. Welcome to our brotherhood, Umar smiled. And with that, we are ending with on this chapter. It's been 2.5 hours. My voice is slowly dying. And Foppet is getting sleepy. I am too, to be honest. I didn't sleep well last night. You're dying. I'm not dying, my voice is dying, that's all. Get good sleep. I shall try. My cats tend to have the zoomies around this time of night, so might be a bit before I manage to get to sleep. I've heard them fighting with the door because I decided to close the computer room door today, so that's why you didn't hear me yelp in pain as Rosto normally does during these streams, because he tends to claw at my leg to climb on my lap. Anywho, thank you all for hanging out with me. I hope you all enjoyed our reading time. Tomorrow evening, we will be starting a fresh run of Baldur's Gate with Foppin. Please tune in at 9 p.m. EST, or thereabouts. And I hope to see you there. A rogue and a druid. Yes. A rogue and a spore druid. Have a good night, everyone, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.